guys, just to let you know, it's Olivier speaking. I'm going to try to do my best, but I may not be able to stay until the end of the call because I'm in the car right now, heading to the airport to fly back to Berlin, so it's kind of a mess.
All right, let's schedule your things first, Olivier, then.
Okay, thanks a lot, dude.
Yeah. Trying to figure out how... Trying to get the URL for the live stream link, and I cannot find it. Oh boy. One concurrent viewer. All right. Before we get started, I guess I should tweet out the live stream link as well. And All right, so I think we can get started. The live stream seems to be working well. Yeah, I guess I'll keep checking it to see if anything goes down. But yeah, looks like I could figure out how to start it myself. I will share the agenda and then we can talk. Actually, I need to change the permissions here so we can all edit it. If you have it open, please refresh and you should be able to edit it. There's the link to the agenda. I'm just going to ask a couple people to take notes. I think I know, Falco, you haven't taken notes here yet, so if you could take notes. And Kevin?
I took notes last time.
Oh, damn it. Then
the notes.
Daniel, do you want to take the notes?
Yeah, sure, I'll do it.
Right, thank you. Yeah, I should look over last week's notes. I at least don't hate the same people twice. All right, so Falco and Daniel will be taking notes. Otherwise, let's start with introductions. I've just noticed Martin from Consensus has joined. He is one of the AGP partners. I believe this is your first time on the call.
Hey, it's actually my second time. I was also in the last one, the previous one. Nice.
All right, then. Then anybody else who is new, this is your chance. I guess that's it. All right. So everyone here has met each other. In that case, we can go on to the updates. I'll start with Aragon Ones. And so for the last 2 weeks, we have been mostly, I guess, occupied with more organizational things. We had EthCC the week before, where Jorge presented the voting V2 progress and just thoughts on how to improve that. As well, last week we had our internal offsite. So we've done a lot of quarterly planning and just trying to hash out what the goalposts should be for the next quarter, and just in general the high level targets that we want to reach. In particular, I think from this last week, we've realized a lot of things about user adoption that would be, we're just not seeing user adoption across the board as much as we'd like. There are Scout dashboards that are publicly accessible to show kind of our growth and how many, just in general, daily or monthly active organizations there are. And we're trying as much as we can to get these number higher in this next quarter, trying to figure out ways to get adoption, what makes most sense for people, as well as just really hashing out what Aragon 0.7 means, and what what things will look like come June. So on that note, I think Aragon 0.7 we've pretty much discussed, and it's including the general set of features that we've been talking about previously. The Identities, the local identity provider, as well as the App Center for upgrading applications. It also will include a more robust responsive feature set. It's not, I think the responsiveness, we're still not quite there with how we want the API to look, but at this point, this is what we have. And if we decide to change how we do it in the future for improvements to the UX, that will just have to be communicated and given a time for migration, as well as hopefully a fallback mechanism. Outside of that, we decided the contract updates that we've been trying to do for 0.6. At this point, it's so far down the line and so close to 0.7 that we decided to release these new contract updates with 0.7, so that on day one, users will have the App Center to upgrade these applications. the biggest changes again in this new set of contracts is token compatibility with the broken tokens from Solidity 0.4.22. Some of which include some large names. You can kind of research for the broken list of tokens if you're interested in the scope of how many tokens are affected, as well as some like more plumbing and just kind of infrastructure related changes to the contracts that we've been talking about with our security partners. Outside of just the Aragon product itself, I think the court has also been making great heaps and bounds. We're hoping to open source that in the next few weeks, and Jorge can give a better update.
Yeah, am I muted now?
You're on.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, as Brad was saying, we've been doing some advances in the course last week. We actually identified some things that we want to change, but that generally simplified the model a little bit more. So yeah, we're working on a human readable description of what's going on, and as soon as that's polished, we intend to publish that in the forum. Maybe at the same time as we merge one spike pull request that still needs some work, but at that point we will be ready to open source it and start getting feedback and comments.
Very nice. So yeah, definitely look forward towards that. Us open sourcing the implementation. I don't think we've quite set a date yet on when that will happen, but it should be sooner than later. We made again quite a lot of progress on it, and I know some people, especially on I think it was Reddit, that were asking us when they might get more specific details about the court. With that, I don't have anything else to add from Aragon 1. Anybody here, in case I might have missed something, can chime in? Okay, otherwise we can go to Altark.
Hey, it's Yalda. So I'll be giving the update today. So last week, the dev update was we finished the contract work for the rewards app, or in the past 2 weeks, sorry, and the majority of the front end and began the integration work. And we also implemented Cypress for end-to-end testing of the planning suite monorepo. And we fine-tuned our apps as part of the planning suite milestone 5 work, including enhancements to the allocation store, implementing the address badge component, and the standardization for how we do the Etherscan URL. Then we finished the technical spec for the profile application using 3box, and we began researching the implementation between 3box and Aragon and discovered there are limitations in the current architecture to get the integration working, because we need to be able to sign arbitrary messages with users need to sign arbitrary messages with their Ethereum accounts. And
Yalda, can you slow down a little bit? You're just going really fast, and I'm trying to.
Oh, sorry. I actually have like notes written already that I could share with you too, if you want.
Okay. Okay. Just a quick question. The 3box implementation was you're talking about integrating with the identity providers of Aragon JS. Is that right?
Not exactly. It's like if we're going to build an Aragon application that a user will be interacting with to populate their data, where they do it on Aragon and then it is using 3box, so it's actually updating it on 3box. So there would be like this relationship between a 3box profile and a identity app in Aragon. And that's also something I wanted to discuss later, because I'm not sure what the current strategy is for the identity app, if it's going to be using 3box or if our profiles work as independent. But basically, this is just the general, like, okay, if there was an Aragon app where a user is updating their profile data, we can't use 3box yet until there's this dependency that's resolved. So there is an issue and a couple pull requests right now that might solve it, but the pull requests were just submitted a few hours ago. So we need to still research that and understand if that resolves it or if there still needs to be additional work done.
Gotcha.
So those are general dev updates, and other comments as far as some issues we ran into last week is there was an upgrade to Aragon Os, and that resulted in some issues with our the contract for our projects app. We got a lot of out of gas errors, so we pinned the previous version. So that was one issue. I don't know if Kevin or anyone else want to talk more about that issue, but
hey guys, so basically our projects contract, our projects app contract is pushing up against the upper bounds of what is you can put in like the base app, and I guess like the base app contract in terms of gas, in terms of size. And we were like right up against that limit, and then the upgrade to Aragon Os added some additional logic in one of the imports that's imported into an Aragon app contract, and we were getting out of gas errors because of that. So we pinned down to the previous version. We're going to figure out a long-term solution to get to keep that contract usable with future versions of Aragon Os. But I think that this opens up a broader discussion about just understanding what the maximum size of a Aragon app contract can be, and we're interested in trying to explore that a little bit more later on. But we thought we'd bring that to the table because we feel like we've reached some kind of limit, and we think it's pretty interesting. So thanks.
I'll add it to the agenda.
And then as far as our current priorities go, like as mentioned, we'll be reviewing those recent pull requests to see if it solves our blockers for the 3-box integration, and otherwise looking into doing what it takes to get that working. Writing the technical spec for the discussions application, that's on the OWL side. Finishing the remaining front-end and integration work for the rewards app. Making all of our apps in the planning suite responsive, and integrating the vault into the allocations app and other fine-tuning work related to getting the planning suite into a Rinkeby launch state. And then some other general comments with regards to that is I don't know if this should be like a later agenda topic or something for the future, but the general direction around the mainnet launch of the planning suite, because there is a lot of this work that we're doing in our flock as far as, or that we plan to do for enhancing the API and the forwarding that will make the way that the apps are built much more efficient. And we have also tightly coupled a few of the apps right now due to some of these limitations. And I know that the identity provider work will also start to solve different aspects of our work as well. So I'm not sure if there's any like rush for when we do launch it, but that's something that I want to kind of get a better understanding, so we can plan out security audits and there's roadmap and strategy around that. And that was general updates from our end and questions.
Cool. I've also listed down the technical improvements for Aragon Os. I think we've also been hitting some similar problems. In particular, Faku has been hitting some problems with the forwarding as well. So we can just discuss that a little bit later. I just wanted to check in from the Open Work Labs in case they were here and wanted to have an update as well.
That covered it. Yalda got it.
Yeah, I included theirs and ours because there's overlapping work. So.
All right, sounds good. Then let's move on to Daniel and Gabby, who are working on the CLI.
Hello. So we released a new version of the CLI 5.5, which includes 2 new commands. APM info, which you can use to inspect an APM page, and APM package to inspect registry. We also updated the documentation.
Daniel, could you speak a little bit louder or move closer to the mic?
Yeah, is this better?
Much, much better.
Okay. Yeah, so we also updated the documentation because some features were not documented and the tutorial was a bit outdated. And we included the new guide section with how to publish to APM, which was previously in the boilerplate. And we also did some changes internally to the repository, which is to convert it to a monorepo, and the plan is to break it down into smaller packages. And we also set up end-to-end testing. And yeah, I think that's it.
Awesome. I think on the topic of developer experience too, Pierre has also worked on building a better API for React in terms of how to use the API that Aragon/API exposes. And I think we'll see a little bit more on that. We worked on it last week, but I don't think we've merged or published it yet. All right. In that case, let's move on to the proposed topics. So I know Oliver is on the car, and I'm wondering, is this a good time?
Yeah, actually, I made it to the airport, so I still have a couple of minutes. If I can start, I don't know.
Yeah, so you added the three here for the Aragon CLI restructuring and the Aragon API restructuring.
Yeah, so yeah, basically the idea that I started to try to think about how could we make the Aragon CLI more extensible somehow, because for now it's like super monolithic and super hard for like third-party developers to introduce features into the CLI. I mean, it has to go through Gabi and Daniel, which is great, but if people want to add more specific features for specific applications, stuff like that, it's not really doable. So I've understood that the goal is to divide the CLI into multiple binaries, multiple small packages, as Git is doing actually. Actually, my question was before I can move forward on trying to define to think about how could we make this CLI more extensible, about the path which could be taken, because basically I see two different paths for that. One being, okay, that's how Git does it basically. If you want to extend the Git CLI, what you do is create a new package called git-something. And when you call git space something, if Git does not handle the command natively, it's just going to look for a package name, git dash the name of your command. So basically it gives lots of extensibility because you can add any kind of command you want into the CLI. And Git basically communicates some basic information to the extension through std-in and std-out, like standard input and standard output. So it's not super easy to use, but it has the advantage to be super generic. So this was one of the questions I had in mind, and also how will the idea of a CLI package, how it could work in the CLI, because for instance, working on building the Pando CLI, I figured out that there are some issues we face that I think any kind of extension could face, like fetching the state, for instance, because we don't have these background scripts. So basically we have to handle state fetching and state passing on our own, which is not a problem as such, but I think this is some stuff which could be kind of done automatically by the CLI, like fetching the state or running some kind of a background script, even though it's not a background script, but the equivalent of the front-end background scripts. Also, do you guys think that it's worth relying on the same sandboxing system, for instance, for the CLI extensions? If someone wants to create a CLI application tied to the Aragon CLI, does it make sense to enforce the same kind of sandboxing systems as we have in the front-end architecture for now? And then how do we define the format for the package to be fetched, and how do we make the difference between front-end packages, which are fetched and run by the front-end, the Aragon wrapper, and how do we make the difference between these packages and the one for the CLI, because the way to communicate between the two of it won't be the same. The way to fetch the state won't exactly be the same, stuff like that. So it was more a generic question about, okay, what path should we take regarding this issue of how to extend the CLI?
So it sounds like there's a number of things here, and we could probably break them down. I'm curious, Daniel, what your thoughts are in terms of making it more extendable, either with like a plugin system or like, it almost sounds like we could use something like a node resolution, where if you try to access the command, if you don't know what it is, you go look up the node module instead or something like that.
Yeah, definitely. I think right now, if you break it down to more packages, the main binary can be just kind of like graph all these packages, and you can manage what packages you have, install other commands, and extend it. The only thing we will need to worry about is sandboxing, but I think we can kind of follow what the Aragon GUI has and how it handles apps. But
in particular, I'm also wondering if there are that many commands that people will want to extend. I think in the case of the agent app, I think this is like a clear way we've extended it, just kind of internally. But I'm wondering if you think other people might want want a voting extension or other type of extension.
Yeah, I think so. I think for every app we have, it makes sense to have a graphical interface and also a CLI. So if I make a to-do app, it should be very easily to make a CLI app, I guess.
Cool.
Or maybe this can be kind of generated from the contract. But what I think we should do is just start with a concrete example, which is Pando, and see how we can make it work.
Yeah, that sounds good to me. I think maybe we can just sketch up another meeting or another call, just the two of us, to try to figure out a concrete example and how it could work and stuff like that. I think most of the work will rely on the package system, because basically we can't have the same idea of a background script exactly, I guess, for a CLI tool. It's not going to work the same way exactly. So the way the front end works right now, like fetching the background script, running it like in a buckle or something, and passing the state to the apps when observable, I think this is not really going to be super usable for a CLI stuff. So I think we just have to think about how this could work for a CLI tool, because maybe this is going to be a little bit different.
Yeah, it sounds like the action item might be for you and Daniel, or Oliver and Daniel, to have an offline conversation about this, and then perhaps to create a summary of it to put in the form or present it in another all devs call. I'm not particularly sure about the sandboxing needs for a CLI application, but I think that also depends really on the scope of where we want it to go.
Sounds good. Let's have a call with Daniel, and let's make a summary for everyone, and then we can discuss it on the next call or something.
Sounds good.
Great. Oliver, did you also want to talk about the Aragon API restructuring? Is that included in the last one?
Yes, I mean, the stuff I had in mind was mostly tied to the CLI side of the API, so I think I can discuss it directly with Daniel or Gabi too when we have this call. So.
Okay. Yeah, in particular, you mean like the server, or the Aragon /wrapper implementation right now, and kind of how monolithic it is.
Yes, exactly. The idea was, okay, how do we make the wrapper work for something like a CLI? Because for now it's not really suitable. So how can we re-architecture something like a wrapper for CLI driven tools?
Okay. Yeah, I'm curious to Daniel Norman, not Constantine. It's going to be hard to differentiate you two, but you might also be interested in that as well.
Yeah, I'd love to join that call. So yeah, if we could do it, maybe 3 of us, and I'd love to hear some of your thoughts, Oliver.
Yeah, sure. I include everyone then. I have my flight in like half an hour, but tomorrow I make an invite for everyone. I try to organize something. Sure.
Sweet, thanks.
All right, Oliver, hopefully you still have just a little bit of time before you hit the board. The next item is apiary review.
Yeah, actually it was just to let you know, guys, that we're almost done with the smart contracts. We still need to integrate various smart contracts. But if everything goes well, in 2 weeks, the smart contracts should be almost done, and we're going to focus on the front end. So it was just to start scheduling maybe an internal review. I know there's lots of stuff which are going to need to go through a review and security audits and all in the next couple of weeks. So it was just to let you know that we should be ready in 2 or 3 weeks top, I guess, just to start organizing reviews and audits and stuff like that.
All right, sweet. Yeah, I think in 2 weeks, that is definitely going to be pushing up right before Aragon 0.7, as well as the security partners might be a little bit backed up, but that is a good timeline. I think let's discuss when we get closer and see if we can get some preliminary reviews in before we schedule it for the AGP partners or security partners.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I think Martin is here, and perhaps it'd be interesting if I connect you two offline so that he kind of has an idea of what exactly apiary is and the scope of it, so that they as well can kind of estimate what that might look like and whether or not they can provide an idea of how long it would take.
Sounds good.
Yeah, sounds good too.
Awesome. Yeah, that's definitely coming up a little bit faster than I thought it would based on our previous conversations. I know as well for apiary, Oliver, that there needs to be there is basically design work that has to be done, and I think Yoni was interested in working on some of these designs, but I'm not sure if I don't think you'll be ready with any designs before you start implementing the front end, if it's going to be in 2 weeks.
Yeah, well, basically the idea was to kind of try to finish up the smart contracts as soon as possible, precisely because of the review, then the security audits taking some time and all, and starting working on the front end after that. So we have a couple of ideas right now, but it's like super minimal, let's say. So yeah, it would be super nice if Juni will need to help and give us a hand on that, because besides like easy part like displaying the cell and buy orders, there is a tricky part about displaying the curve in such a way that people can actually understand what is supposed to be the behavior of the curve over time, and that's the really tricky part we're not sure how to handle for now. So yeah, that would be super interesting.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think we'll talk internally as well about how much what Joni's workload looks like. He's on vacation this week, so it will be, again, that's why I say it's not going to be ready in 2 weeks. So let's coordinate offline on that and see where we are.
Sounds good.
All right. Okay, so moving on, I added the maximum size of an Aragon app contract that was brought up by Kevin.
Hey, so I guess I'm curious to, I guess we're curious to understand if this is like, maybe we can just kind of chalk this up to like, more reliably pinning our dependencies, or if there's more interest in like a greater discussion around just kind of specking out the maximum contract size for each release or something like that. I know that it's not a lot of work, but it's extra work, and but I think as we grow, it'll be an adoption kind of takes on, like there will be different use cases. Like this is a very the projects app is like a very maximalist app for those of you who haven't seen it yet, and it does a lot of different things. But it's kind of, at the same time, it's kind of necessary that it's very maximalist. And I think that there will be as adoption grows, there'll be more interest in developing a more maximalist applications with various integrations. And I'm curious to hear thoughts, or like how we might want to proceed with this. I'm happy to just kind of like say like, oh yeah, we need to pin our dependencies more reliably, or maybe. But you know, if there's any interest in discussing like gas, monitoring gas limits, that'd be interesting to me.
Yeah. So on that, we do actually monitor gas increases in Aragon Os for the most part. Every change we do, we kind of provide a summary of how much the changes will be. I think the last time from 4.0 to 4.1, we might have had like I don't know, 100,000 increase in gas for the base Aragon app. I can run the numbers again because I don't remember exactly, and I don't think we put up the number on the pull request. But in general, in this case that you're talking about for the projects app, you mean deploying the base contract itself?
Correct.
And you're hitting like the 8 million gas limit?
Yes.
Okay.
A big part of it is the fact that it interfaces directly with standard bounties. So that gives it some initial size.
In terms of like including, but I somehow I think I find it hard to believe the contract will be more than 8 million in gas, because it's like you've got to have a lot of code for the bytecode to be 8 million.
Yeah, does it deploy any standard bounties contracts to projects directly?
It doesn't. We've trimmed the interface. We never expand. We never had like a full interface, but we only wrote out the interface with the functions that we interact with, and we deploy the standard bounties instance for testing as a part of the kit, not within the project's contract.
And are you using the Aragon OS, like the same optimizer settings with 10,000 runs as well?
Quasi, can you speak to that?
I don't think so. So that would probably help.
Yeah, it may help, but I think it could be interesting if we have like a explicit test in Aragon OS that just deploys, like checks how much gas it takes to deploy like just an empty contract that inherits from Aragon app, and have some tests that say, okay, this cannot be, like if this goes over this threshold, then this test will fail, and then have that for all minor versions in Aragon OS, kind of as a guarantee that while we're in Aragon OS 4, the gas the gases it takes to inherit from Aragon app doesn't go over X.
Yeah, that would definitely solve this situation for us.
Cool. Yeah, I can add an issue in Aragon OS to track this. Yeah, I think the base deployment cost is like probably 120 to 150, or sorry, 1.5 million, probably 1.2 to 1.5 million in gas for the very base Aragon app. And that should leave you quite a lot of room in terms of bytecode.
Okay, thanks, Brett and Louise.
Okay. Yeah, I think following that, we have the technical improvements for Aragon Os. In particular, hopefully smoothing out some of the not so nice things you have to do in the contracts.
Yeah.
Okay, Arthur, yeah.
So I'd expect this is basically only going to require adding additional script executors. I don't think that a lot of other things will need to be changed. I don't know if anybody else has an opinion on that, but I think that most of the other problems that we're seeing in terms of the technical improvements that we need won't relate directly to Aragon OS. I think it's just the forwarder interactions.
And in particular, the forwarding interactions. So we are thinking about adding that extra byte parameter to the forward. And would that solve most cases, or would you actually need more script executors?
That might resolve at least some of the problems. There might be another solution to this, but the other thing that we could see being solved in the script executor is giving the forward-e contract knowledge that a function within it has been started in a forwarder. So if there's, instead of executing a script at completion, if there's the ability to execute a script initially, and then an additional script after either the vote is passed or whatever the criteria for the forwarder to execute that script is, having two execution stages could potentially solve some of the problems. But there may be other solutions to that. Does that make sense?
Interesting. Yeah, I don't think that's something we've really ever considered, like having a forwarder be both instantaneous and also interactive. Because right now our forwardings are definitely one or the other. I mean, I think a generic bytes parameter inside the forwarding interface kind of solves all problems, just because it's like you can do whatever you want with this. But it also sounds like this is a particular case we haven't thought a lot of.
Yeah, even with the general bytes, it feels like it would be difficult to get information back into the contract of origin without some sort of byte coupling. So like, giving information, like let's say that you initialize a vote and you want some sort of additional information from the voting contract in the pending status of the forward-e contract or the contract of origin. Just giving additional bytes into the forwarder, I don't know if would strictly solve that, unless you're using part of the bytes that you're feeding in there to give it information about some sort of function to execute on the forward-e, which I guess you could do. So in that sense, it would solve it, but that's still going to require a little bit of manipulation in the forwarder contracts. And it wouldn't be something that you could generalize that all forwarders are definitely using the additional bytes in that way. So I guess it just depends how much we want to like sort of infer or trust the forwarders to be handling that information in a certain way, and how much we want to standardize the specification for how much the forwarder should be handling those bytes.
Yeah, I'm wondering, in addition to that bytes parameter, if we should add something like a from address, because the forwarder will likely not be called directly from. Actually, maybe it will.
Well, you at least have the address that the script needs to get executed on. So the assumption is that that's sort of the from address. Or do you mean the from address like in terms of the address that's initializing the whole action? Like, what do you see the from being?
Yeah, that's definitely what I was thinking about. Like, there's the target address, and then there's the from address. And I think in your case here, that what you said was more related to the from address. that like somebody wants a, well, no, it's really the to address, right? It's the target who wants more information.
Yeah, it's the target. Because right now the target doesn't necessarily know that one of its functions has been forwarded.
When it gets called, or when the forwarding is starting to happen?
When the forwarding starts to happen.
Okay.
And having sort of like user response on that application to let it know that that action has been initiated seems kind of important. Because, you know, it's obviously important once the script's been executed, but the fact that the script is pending execution is also valuable information to be displaying.
Right. So yeah, these questions I'm asking are wondering if it's more related to the UX side of things, or if it's a on-chain contract need that you need to ping a contract as you're getting forwarded.
I mean, there's probably solutions that don't rely on contracts, but anything that you do with that isn't going to be I guess as long as you're reading the forwarder from the interface of the application of origin, whether it's in the contract side or whether it's in the UI side, it doesn't matter a ton, but there's not necessarily a way to display that information right now, right?
Yeah, we don't have the plumbing to show you that something is like stuck in a queue and forwarding.
So I guess either place to add that, if you add it at the OS level or you add it at like the API level, either one of those solutions would be good as long as that information is accessible. And I guess I could make a case for either one. It's probably, if there is an easy solution that doesn't require a contract modification, that's probably better. And then we could just generalize to make sure that the stuff that's actually being passed through the contracts is just like this generalized bytecode you're suggesting. But yeah, it would still be good to be able to pull that information. Again, like, I don't know what the best term is, like contract of origin, forward E, for whatever's triggering the forwarder.
Yeah.
Is there some sort of like decided phrase that you guys use to refer to that contract or app?
I would still call it like the target application, because they're ultimately trying to do something on the target application. But I mean, now that we're talking about it, I think we can take the conversation offline a little bit, because I think I have some ideas around perhaps an API that apps can declare, like, I'm getting forwarded, so you should care about this thing that I'm getting, like an EVM script, for example, an EVM call script. And then based on that information, the front end, like the API, can parse it and be like, oh, okay, you're actually going to be doing these things in these steps, and I can tell other applications like it's in progress. But yeah, I have some thoughts about it, and let's discuss this offline, Arthur.
Okay, sounds good.
All right. Please make a note of that, or just ping me on Keybase, so we can start that in case I forget. All right. Yeah, in addition to this, I think, Faku, you've been running into problems with the forwarding, and I don't know if you wanted to share a little bit of light on it, and just kind of what you're facing.
Yeah. Well, the issue that I've been having is it was related to the voting app. That actually, like, the forwarding message was creating a new vote, and currently what we're needing is the create vote function needs to receive some arguments that it's another kind of arguments that are not input for the EVM scripts, are just some arguments in order to for some checks that we need to perform before creating a vote. And well, that kind of conflicts with the forwarding interface, right? So yeah, that's the problem I'm facing.
Okay. And yeah, for context, I think this is because we need to send a lot of information as part of the EVM script, or as part of the EVM storage proof in the new voting architecture that Facu's been working on.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, this sounds like something we should definitely start considering for the next release of Aragon Os. How to get these inputs, and how to declare apps.
Yeah. Well, currently, for example, the current voting app, it receives a metadata string, I think, and something else that obviously we can find a way to make it work with some default values, but it may be probably interesting to give it a thought. And yeah, because we may face some scenarios where there are no default values for like to make it working. And I think this new voting approach is an example of that.
Yep, definitely agree. Okay. So I think we can move on to the next topic, knowing as well that we're a little bit coming to the end here. I wanted to bring up the identity providers that we discussed last time. Now that I think it's gotten a lot more form movement and people have looked at it, in case there were any more discussions that wanted to be brought up.
Any more discussions besides this topic?
No. On this topic that we want to do in person on the chat versus on the forum.
I guess one question is how this might relate to a drop-down menu. Have you thought about that, like a recipient drop-down menu? And if it would work there too for having human readable names, like say you're creating a new transfer in the finance app and you want to select a person in your DAO and you want to see their name in there. Will this work for that purpose?
Yeah, that's the input fields are difficult. I haven't really thought too much about that, and that's just in general something that's hard to do because you can't just be like, hey, 3box, give me all the results of like BRE and show me like a curated list of those, hopefully with one with my name on it.
Yeah, I guess it's like, can there be a way where there is some kind of cache or something where you're not doing the lookups whenever you open the drop-down menu, but the application has like an understanding of the current mapping of the people in your DAO, for example. So I don't know, like that's just what comes to mind for me, but I'm not really an expert.
So Daniel may be able to speak more on this. He's implementing the Aragon JS side of it, and we do actually have a cache for this, which might be interesting.
I have one question before we let Daniel talk. Do we actually want to have the apps or make the apps have let them have the whole local identities list? Because como this could provide an exploit, no? Just como being able to access all the local identities, all the address books, so to say.
Yeah.
I think the answer is the answer that we've established so far is no, but it's definitely something that we could sort of discuss to understand better what was the motivation behind it. But I think there were two things here. There was the fact that some identities are local, some are asynchronous, and the other was, of course, that we don't want to expose because of that assumption. Of course, it's like you can't just randomly expose all identities to the apps, especially if it's coming also from external providers.
And I mean, ultimately, even if they do have the list, it's up to the application to render them properly. Like your application could take the list or it could even take the information that you get from the identity provider and like completely do whatever it wants to do.
For example, what, cache locally, or what do you mean exactly with that?
Either cache locally or asynchronous. Like, let's say we have the local labels and we give that to an app. The app is like, hey, what's the local label for 0x123? And then it gets it and it's like, oh, I see that the label is Daniel, but instead of Daniel, I'm going to render Brett because I feel like rendering Brett.
Yeah, sure. They have that flexibility. It's like, but I'm more curious in sort of the previous question, which I didn't fully get. The question that came from Yolda on like.
Yeah, you said you didn't fully understand it.
Yeah, I didn't fully get it. Sorry.
Well, let's say, okay, seeing an address on the surface of an app is just one aspect of when you want to render a human readable name versus 0x blah, blah, blah. The other aspect as far as how web apps work is drop-down menus. So we have to kind of think about how this might fit into every possible place that, web apps today use like a name. Like that's what we're trying to replicate, like a name of a person. So a drop-down is somewhere where you would want to have names of people. And I think we can't say, oh no, like security, we can't have it there. Like I don't think that's a solution if we want this platform to be adopted by people. So there needs to be some kind of solution. Otherwise, we will never be able to replicate.
Absolutely. No, I got that part.
Yeah. So were there still questions on how on what I was saying, or no?
No, I got that part. I guess I'm just thinking about the technical aspect of this implementation, of implementing it. And I think we haven't fully sort of formalized what it would look like with asynchronous identity providers. But I mean, there's one caching layer that could happen inside Aragon JS for those things, but yeah, I don't have much to say at this point. I need to sort of spend more time thinking about it.
Yeah.
This is Martin speaking from the diligence team. I'd like just to add on to the security discussion, especially for, we're talking about identities and caching them, and that there's a security implication for that. My question would be, are the identities accessible by anyone and are just cached in the front end, or are they only explicitly available for some server or something?
Well, as we speak, yeah. No, I got you. So they are available in the apps, but as we speak, we're right now, we're first working on the initial draft, which is the local identities. So the more broader discussion is still open in terms of its technical implementation.
Yeah. If you want, you can also include us in that discussion, and we can give you feedback while you are exploring the ways you can do that, if that would be helpful.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I can give you a form link as well, Martin, about this whole idea about entity providers. It's actually, I think it's linked in the proposed topic. The what we're calling local identities right now is basically you have a JSON file inside local storage or IndexedDB that we then resolve addresses against.
Okay, I see. But then also the caching would be local, fully local, right?
It would be fully local, for this at least, yeah.
So there is no difference between having it in local storage or in a caching layer in the JavaScript application?
Essentially none, except for, what's it called? Except for when you refresh the app, you can get it back from local storage.
Yeah.
It's persistent.
Yeah, cool. But happy to join the discussion if you guys need any feedback from us out there.
Brett, just on that note of like listing, say in a drop down, is this anything that you've sort of already spent time thinking about? And if so, do you have any insights to share on that? Besides it being difficult.
Yeah, we have had I think this is like the golden grail or holy grail of identities, when you can get it to render in a drop down. And when you can have like autocomplete and fuzzy search and things like that. I don't really have too many ideas. I can imagine where if Aragon JS has a cache of these identities that it's resolved, that in a dropdown you can query this cache to be like, hey, have I actually resolved this? And if so, I'm gonna be able to get a list of the ones that match based on, I guess, the name field or the address field. But that's something that's really I haven't thought too much about, and just the mention of the cache actually reminded me that actually we do have like a list of information that we could give to applications, Aragon applications front end, so that if they wanted to, they could try and do like a little bit of fuzzy search or auto completion.
A list of what was that again?
A list of identities.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, you can imagine like I'm searching for like Yada's name in my local identity list, and I start with YAL, and because it's mostly matching, I get like a list of 3 or 4 identities that match that letter pattern, and then I could keep doing that and select one of the few.
Yeah, I mean, I can easily go on this discussion because perhaps we want to take this offline and then just share the insights next thing. But yeah, essentially the big question here is whether we start caching, say, remote identity providers, and as I think it was Martin who mentioned, that might introduce some security concerns. But if we do, then that means that for every address we might have more than one cached identity, and then that is something that apps, as they say, load a drop down. They could sort of request based on a keyword and get, or the search whatever's already been typed, or if it's just a full list, they could request that and then get whatever's cached. But again, this is exposing, theoretically, this could expose the full list of identities, which is something that, from what I understand, we had already in mind as a constraint.
Yeah, I don't really know if the full list is that dangerous to have. Changing the list is dangerous, but getting it is not that big of a deal, I'd say. I mean, ultimately, if you query every address in existence, you get all that anyway, however long that may take.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not particularly worried with the full like caching state, but the asynchronous identities are a bit of a pain because they could change underneath you, and I don't know what like an appropriate refresh time would look like, because it's not like we can get ping from 3box or a different like ENS if someone decides to change.
Yeah, I was more making the assumption that every identity, irrespective of whether it's a local identity or a remote one, would be cached, and then in that case, you can have multiple identities, multiple resolutions for a single address that is cached. And the moment that starts happening, then there's 2 questions that arise. The first is, do we just pump into the applications, or do we give the application the ability to request all cached identities, local and remote?
Yeah, I think that's where I was my line of thinking was going. We could cache all resolved identities, and then based on like if you search for a large enough prefix string, like let's say 4 or 5 characters, then it would start matching them and giving them back to you. Versus like, I mean, if you give it an empty string, like hopefully you don't get the whole list because it could be quite big. So you have to set some kind of limits.
Yep. And then the other thing is that if you define an identity in one application, that means that any other application could theoretically suss out different identities in different applications by trying to request them all. And that's sort of where what I think the security concern was, besides just the remote ones changing over time.
Yeah, I'd have to think more about the implications of getting those identities, but I'm definitely I don't see like a particularly big risk. Maybe Martin might be able to chime in on this as well, but eventually you're going to figure out like an identity even if you're not looking for it. Like I could try all names on Facebook and get all the identities, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, Facebook is even restricting that.
Probably for good reason.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think we should have a security discussion about that once it's clear. Because I don't have too much insights right now into the identities part. I just opened the link that you linked in there. I will make sure that I check it out. But I think we should keep in mind that this should be discussed from security perspective as well, as there were some concerns raised already. I think the concern was about like someone enumerating all names for addresses or something. And what I'm not quite sure right now is what is the trust model you have right now? Do we trust applications? Is the client trusted and all this stuff? And where are identities stored at the moment? And what could go wrong? Or who could have an incentive to actually enumerate all these identities? So this is something that we can figure out then offline as well.
Sounds good. Yeah, I can send you some details about the current implementation, and as well answer anything about the proposal in the forum thread, and we can take it offline. All right, so now we're coming to the end. I know we're a little bit over the time, and I don't know, Yauda, if you wanted to do this today, given the time left, or do it next time.
If we don't do it today, I want to know what communication channel we should discuss such topics. Like sometimes I don't know if it's private chat or what, but it has to do with deciding like, okay, we're A1 and Autark. We both have initiatives related to identity and organizations. And there might be these like applications that we're both developing. Like, do we collaborate on the application and we build different features? Do we do things independently, like in an R&D mode, and then hook things up later? I mean, I think like we have to kind of decide how that's working, because it's not currently clear to me what work is being done on the Aragon Identity app, and if and where our profiles work would interface with that. Assuming we go down the 3-box approach, like I don't know if there's still going to be like images and names maintained in a separate Aragon Identity app, or if there is, or if we should make the proposal, yeah, let's go with 3-box. We get a sign off, and then 3-box takes care of that part, and then the part that we might still keep in Aragon is like the ENS part with the subdomains, right? So that's how I'm currently seeing it. And then, yeah, the other aspect has to do with the organization and how that organization identity might relate to the home app and the strategies around that and how it fits with our About app initiative. So if we can't discuss it in this call, I need to have answers before 2 weeks. So if I don't know what chat channel we should discuss this on.
I'm also interested in this topic, so I don't know. I mean, I think perhaps since this is the last topic, could we continue discussing this now? And if this is the last topic, then anyone who's not interested, could we just stay on and they could just drop off?
Yeah, that sounds like a good model. We can keep it on, keep the live stream on, but we can discuss it now, and then if we need to, we can again discuss it in the next All Devs call.
Yeah, so I guess from the A1 side, do you want to kind of give an overview of how you're thinking of the organization, your identity experience initiative, and how that relates to different Aragon apps, and if like the organization part is more part of like the core, yeah, just like a bit of an overview of what's on your mind right now.
Yeah, the only thing I can really say about the identity aspects is like the identity app itself. We haven't gotten too many, too many designs from the outside from the one that we had last year, and we're still kind of just putting that in the back burner to focus on other things more important to the core and Aragon 0.7.
Okay, that's at least good for us to know, because we can go ahead with what we're doing with the profiles app, and we're not like doing parallel work. At least that was just one major concern I had right now is, oh, okay, if there's something else under development, then maybe we're like both doing the same thing at the same time. So I guess that answers it for the identity aspect. And then I guess the way that the identity providers works in your list now too, I assume that was just an initial design where one thing was 3box and another was identity. But essentially, if we built an app that was for identity that used 3box, then, and that's like the Aragon identity app, then we don't need both of those essentially. So I guess I don't know if there are any limitations with how you're currently developing that API, but that just might be one thing for us to consider.
So just a question, do you see the 3box identity app that you're working on, do you see that as sort of a UI for interacting with 3box? Or, I mean, how does that sort of connect to the whole Aragon?
So basically we would be using the API. So within Aragon, you can update your profile, but it updates your 3box profile. So you don't have to go to 3box to do it. It's like, but it is on 3box. So if you use other apps that integrate with 3box, the identity that you've created for yourself in Aragon, like with your image description, would be available in other apps. So that's our current approach right now is, so the user doesn't have to leave Aragon. They can update it, and Aragon talks to 3box. So that's how we want to approach it.
Yeah, there's one other thing to chime in on, because I've been doing a lot of the just work on 3box. There's also application specific stores, data stores within a 3box. So a user could store data in like an Aragon store that would only be accessible to users that sign a specific message saying, hey, this app can open the Aragon data store. And so 3box sometimes will other applications into using that store instead of overwriting default values. And this is something that I'm talking with them about. But this, again, would have certain, depending on decisions that we make for profiles, have implications towards how identity is handled through, the Aragon 1 team. For example, like storing any data in an Aragon specific store would not be as easily accessible to other apps. So yeah, it seems like there should be some discussion and at least making sure we're on the same page about things and data standards that are going into the 3box it seems like we could collaborate on certain things, or at least be on the same wavelength.
Yeah, certainly. I think just to add on to what you said, so Brett initially wrote a spec which actually addresses some of the potential questions that might come up. And like essentially what you're bringing up now is that, well, the identity provider like 3box has this extra layer, right, where it allows you to do application specific identities. And that is, of course, one of those things that would be a good test for how well the spec is it covers these type of use cases where you have, a very specific identity provider details that you need to address. So I think the first point would be maybe to have a look at the specification. I can already put a link. It was in the Aragon JS repo. and definitely like let's have a discussion about this so that we can better that implementation.
Absolutely. I'll definitely take a look if you post a link. Yeah, I think that would be helpful.
And then, yeah, I guess the other thing is I guess I see there could be use cases where you have the Aragon Identity app that might have a 3-box API and then 3-box independently for people that aren't in Aragon, right? So I guess there still might be that overlap there. One thing to note. And then, like I said before, the other topic has to do with organization identity, like the name and avatar for an organization. That's obviously not something where you would have a 3-box profile for your DAO. So that's obviously has to be managed separately. And I'm wondering if there's any insight on how that is going to be managed, because I don't know if it makes sense to do it as a standalone application or something that's more part of I'm not sure the best technical term, like the core or the client or whatever, something that's outside of an app.
Yeah, I think we call them native apps.
Native apps, okay. Yeah, so has there been any work done yet on that organization native app? And if not, should we go ahead and just start working on it? Like what our About app is, like just call that the organization app for now?
Yeah, that's a good question.
I would say we should definitely decide on this, especially if you're ready to work on it. The thing with the organization data to me has always been this metadata blob and how to keep it alive and what the strategy is around that before we even get to designing the UI. And in my impression, all of the options open up once we have the ability to persist this metadata blob, even if it's like loading and dumping to JSON like we are with the local identities. But yeah, once we have that information, then we can start figuring out how to use it. And I mean, there's like a vast expansive range of features that we can build in terms of customization if we have something like this. In particular, the home app, we've definitely talked about it a couple of times, just like, should we change it to be more organization specific and things like that? And it definitely sounded like it collided with the About app. And my general feeling now is if we can have some sort of native way to persist this file across organizations, then it should just be a native app that hooks onto it and people have some ability to change. I mean, there's also the question of version controlling and who can actually change this organization's about information and logo and things like that.
Can't that be handled by the permissions app? I mean, I assume there would be some, I guess that's the other question is, do we see this as having a smart contract for the organization and then it uses the permission system for like update, whatever, or update organization identity, and then it's just protected through that, and then it gets sent to the voting app if there are changes. I mean, that's how I've been envisioning it, as far as it using the ACL for updates, and potentially the information might just live in a contract as well. I mean, for us, we haven't been thinking about the avatar and how that's rendered throughout the app. It is more, or what would be, you know, just like available in like the landing page of a DAO or something. So I'm not sure if I'm not sure if there are the same concerns as the greater initiative of like rendering the avatar everywhere.
Yeah, there are definitely a couple of different paths that this information could go into. One could be a very simple separate app that just exposes that permission. Another could be with the ENS, the membership proposal that Jorge wrote. You can in many ways control that text resolver field with a permission as well. So that could be another way of encoding that information. So, and probably there's more than just that. So there's kind of a couple of ways to do this, and also probably a couple of ways to make sure it persists.
Is there still intention to move forward with the ENS-based membership proposal?
That's something we really don't know at this point right now. We're not super focused on building that out in light of other kind of easier to reach for UX improvements. Just because that thing, depending on the way we go, it necessitates an Aragon Os change, or it just is kind of difficult to deal with in terms of the ENS itself.
Yeah, so I would agree with that, and I think that for those reasons, the small contract-based way where you just handle the authentication at that level would probably be a good place to start with it, and then maybe it could be migrated over to ENS-based membership. But if there's no interest in pushing that proposal forward right now, I think that just at least to get something going. And I think that for other reasons, you could argue that the contract-based authentication is going to be more flexible. So I'd be in favor of that path.
Yep.
Yeah, so I guess should we decide like what's the best medium of communication to continue this discussion to? I don't know if we can have all the answers in like 5 minutes, but should we just start brainstorming in a forum post? Should we choose some chat channel like Dev or wherever we want to do it? Because we don't have any like Flock channel or anything like that, so.
Yeah, not really. I'm wondering what the best way of doing this is, and in particular, for A1 at least, Lewis and Patty would be the initial ones to talk to about where to go with the home app.
Yeah, I would say, I would say, Yalda, to have a conversation with Luis, especially on that, for that type of coordination, and then any further discussions on that. Initially, I think we can have them in the dev channel in the Aragon chat. We have been having internal discussions about whether we need a specific channel for Flock, and the answer more or less is that we should use initially we should use the dev channel to encourage this kind of discussion in a more open way.
Okay, sure, that makes sense.
Yeah, I would definitely say the first action item for this would be to have some sort of kickoff call with Lewis and Patty, and just kind of get an idea of what it is that we want the home app to be, because we've definitely fluctuated. Like I think we're on like the 4th or 5th idea of what the home app could be now, and at some point we have to decide what it's going to be.
The current thoughts that I have relate to widgets and customizing the widgets, whether it's data from your DAO, like here's my manifesto, or maybe here's a data feed from this other app. Like I think down the line you kind of want this more dashboard type feel. But those are my thoughts. Widgets.
Yeah. I think that's like a combination of some other ideas that we've had too, in terms of what information it should advertise, if it's organization centric or user centric or etc. But yeah.
Yeah, I just think if you do it as flexible as that, then we don't have to make the perfect, what we think is the perfect home app. It's like, okay, I think the dashboard way, at least like, whenever I was working on enterprise project management and studying different tools, there's people were just going in this direction of widgets, whether it was like SAP or Oracle. So I think we probably might want to think in that same sort of mentality of what enterprise applications do. Or like Asana or whatever. I mean, you always have like these more like customized views. But yeah, we can discuss that more.
Yeah, we're definitely not going to get to an answer in 5 minutes. So.
And SAP is not a good example.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, saying a dashboard, like I was just using it as, okay, if we're talking about a DAO and you're coordinating the work for thousands of people, you do have to take some inspiration from enterprise apps. I'm not saying you copy their design patterns, like how it looks, but just like, okay, the basic features. Okay, why do these top companies have dashboards? It's like, okay, because you want to have an insight into information for everything that's going on in your organization. As we add more apps to Aragon, it's going to become increasingly important to have a one-stop shop that gives you a highlight of everything, because the notifications panel can kind of give you more of the recent events, but to have like a better historic view, you do need a dashboard approach. Dashboard.
I totally agree with you. I was just working with the Cloud for Customer parts and some other parts from SAP, and I think they didn't really get the idea of widgets and stuff, because they were just randomly placing tiles everywhere and nothing was working, and it was completely wasting most of the screen space with oversized tiles and stuff. So that's why I just wanted to add that joke to that discussion. Didn't really meant it as some feedback.
All right, I think we've established clear action items for this going forward. I think we can loop back around as well in future all devs calls to discuss some of these once we have more insights and actionable items from offline coordination. We're quite over time, obviously, so I just wanted to add, Martin?
I just wanted to quickly outline or give an update also from our side, and I will be pretty quick on that because I think it's not too interesting for most of you. But we tightly collaborate with Auth.io on their audit as well, providing some insights, and we had some collaborative sessions working on some of the findings they found and also some of the things we found. Then we are preparing to audit the upcoming PRs as discussed with Brett already in the previous call. And we're also looking forward to getting more insights into your development process, so that we can also better understand you guys and make sure that we can work efficiently in our food chain that we have right now with the ongoing security efforts. Yeah, that's basically it from our side.
Awesome. Thank you, Martin. I guess I can add as well that Alex is not here, but from Auth.io, they are finishing the baseline audit this week. And they've given kind of a teaser already of what they found. And we're kind of working through those. All right. Is there anybody else who would like to chime in? Otherwise, we can close. All right. So thank you, everyone, for joining. I believe next time it's on April 1st. A better day. But I believe also will be kind of the time zone switch. So if you're in the US or Canada or, I mean, other places in the world, depending on your time zone, you may want to check your calendars exactly when this call is. We're going to stay with European time. So that'll be 5 o'clock. I believe it's CEST next time. We go from CET to CEST. As well, just in terms of like purely logistical things, we may move the notes taking to HackMD. We're trying to get all of these call notes up on the wiki so that people who weren't on the live stream or just are interested in previous notes can look at them. And Google Docs, it's kind of a pain to convert it to Markdown. So we may just natively start taking notes and building the agenda in HackMD.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone. See you next time.
All right.
Thank you.
See you.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.